Fortnite is gone. That's right, if you go to the Apple App Store or check the Google Play Store, you'll see that the app has been completely removed from both. And while no longer being able to play Fortnite may be an annoyance to many, this ban may allow Epic Games, which is the studio behind Fortnite, to make some massive profits. How, you may ask? Well, stick around until the end, and we'll give you the inside scoop on this episode of Super Freaky Science. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification button so you'll never miss out on all of our latest content. First of all, let's hammer down the basics of the situation. Now, the argument between Epic Games, who is the developer behind Fortnite, and Apple, who is the owner of the Apple App Store obviously, all began on August 13th. That's because it was on this day that Epic Games auto-updated the app so that consumers could choose to pay Epic directly for in-app purchases rather than pay through Apple. In essence, this meant that when gamers would go to buy V-Bucks, which are Fortnite's currency, they would be given two options. They could either pay through the App Store and be charged the regular price, or pay directly to Epic Games and receive a 20% discount. This of course went against Apple's App Store guidelines, and as a result, after just a few hours, Apple pulled Fortnite from the App Store. And this has led to a massive legal and social media battle between the two, with Epic Games filing lawsuits against both Apple and Google Play for supposedly having an unfair monopoly over the gaming industry, while also trying to make the hashtag #FreeFortnite trend on social media in order to rally gamers to their cause. Now, while this may be the short and simple take on the situation, there are many more intricate parts at play here. That's because while both sides have a fair argument to stand on, there are some behind the scenes realities that make the situation a lot less black and white than it may seem. In regards to Apple, their argument centers around the fact that they are offering a service that is of value, thus making the extra 20% service charge necessary in order for them to collect their 30% tax. On the surface, this is because the App Store is expensive to run, as many developers must be employed in order to make it work smoothly. Additionally, the Apple App Store is one of the most widely used e-commerce stores on the planet, and thus to have your app featured on it helps with sales in and of itself. However, perhaps the greatest reason why this argument makes sense is because this service fee is pretty much the only way that Apple can cover its costs. And this is why Apple was so willing to act so decisively and ban Fortnite in order to protect its income stream. But the argument put forward by Epic Games centers around the fact that forcing an app to work through the App Store gives Apple an unfair monopoly on the gaming industry. In fact, in the lawsuit against Apple, Epic Games went so far as to say that Apple is a, quote, behemoth seeking to control markets, block competition, and stifle innovation, end quote. And while this may seem like an extreme claim, there is some validity here. After all, if Apple were to at least lower its 30% fee, the increased profits could theoretically be put back into the game's development, allowing Epic Games to improve Fortnite on a faster scale. Yet the one argument that perhaps even tops this one is that using the App Store is not a choice but a requirement. That's because in order to have an app run on Apple's iOS software, it must be run through the App Store, thus forcing companies to pay their dues to Apple if they wish to use its platform. And while this is generally still a profitable trade-off for many developers, Epic Games argues that if this rule wasn't in place, then it would have simply released its own competing App Store. Thus, it's the fact that it's not an option is what truly makes Apple's policy malicious. Yet while both companies have escalated this conflict and tried to rally support, there are some pretty shady details on both sides that have been largely left unsaid. And when the situation is examined in its entirety, it seems that Epic Games is likely in this argument for all the wrong reasons. This is because Epic Games has been highly hypocritical throughout this entire process. You see, the first thing to keep in mind is that despite Epic Games being a multi-billion-dollar company, it has chosen to only file lawsuits against Apple and Google, and has not filed any complaints against Microsoft or Sony. This is very strange, considering the app stores on Microsoft's Xbox and Sony's PlayStation work in a very similar fashion to the Apple App Store, as they also charge a 30% fee for any in-game purchases. As a result, if Epic Games really cared so much about the players, then it would have filed complaints and lawsuits against all of its platforms. In fact, if Epic Games really cared about the gamer experience, they would have kept Fortnite online while fighting the 4 platforms in court, as they could have done so without having their game banned in the process. But instead of doing this, they decided to take the game offline. Now it could be argued that they did this in order to gain publicity for their lawsuit. After all, what better way to get people on your side than to villainize the company that took their favorite game away from them? Yet let's not forget that if Epic Games is successful in stirring up enough of an uproar for Apple to adjust their policies, they stand to make a lot more money. To understand why, let's take a look back at the numbers. Now, when Epic Games chose to defy Apple, they lowered the price of V-Bucks by 20%. However, when asked how much they owed Apple, it was 30%. This means that anytime a user directly bought their V-Bucks from Epic Games would make about 10% more than if they would have bought them through Apple. For example, on a $10 purchase, V-Bucks bought through Apple would leave the company with $7. However, if bought through Epic Games, the company would be left with $8. And while 10% may seem insignificant, when you consider that Fortnite has over 100 million iOS downloads and that many of their users are active, this could easily bring in over $1 billion in extra revenue. That's money that's currently going to Apple and thus not being passed to the gaming community. However, that doesn't mean that Apple is totally in the clear. That's because it has been involved in some pretty shady deals that have made exceptions to its 30% rule. And the most notable to date has been with Chinese tech giant Tencent. That's because Tencent got into hot water with Apple in 2018 when its flagship app WeChat got flagged for allowing money transfers between individuals that went outside of Apple's payment systems. And while this should have led to an outright ban, the issue was resolved with a quote mutual understanding. And while this may seem shady on its own right, things get even weirder when you consider that Tencent owns 40% of Epic Games. As a result, it's conceivable that this entire lawsuit is a strategic move by Tencent that has been done in order to get Apple to continue to offer monetary favors to all the other apps in its arsenal. So at the end of the day, what does all this mean? Well, based on the information we have, this move probably had nothing to do with the players, and instead is much more likely to have been a very calculated risk on the part of Epic Games to try to bring in extra revenue. After all, if they end up successfully suing Apple in court, then they stand to make hundreds of millions, if not billions more in revenue per year. And when you consider that they have Tencent on their side, this risk becomes even more likely to pan out. As a result, the case of Epic Games against Apple can be summed up as one massive money-making publicity stunt. As a result, if you've used the hashtag #FreeFortnite or have participated in this movement in any way, then you've done exactly what Epic Games wants you to do in order for it to bring in some extra cash. Thanks for tuning in, and let us know your take on this epic court battle in the comments. Thanks for watching Super Freaky Science, and don't forget to subscribe.